What's up YouTube community, Bernd here, welcome back to another video lesson. This is part 1 of a little scale feature where we check out what happens when we combine the pentatonic approach with the sound of the modes. This week we focus on the major pentatonic scale and the Lydian mode. Make sure to tune back in next week where we look at the minor pentatonic scale and the Dorian mode. Most of my students are already familiar with the sound of the major and minor pentatonic scales, and a lot of us players started out with these scales when we started improvising or playing guitar solos for the first time. They are very popular not just because of their sound but also because of their simplicity. The heptatonic scales like major and minor consist out of 7 notes, while the pentatonic scale only consists out of 5 notes. We already looked into composing shred guitar licks with the pentatonic scale a couple of weeks ago in a different lesson. In that one we were extending the popular 2-note per string approach that we mostly come across with pentatonic licks to a 3-note per string approach like that. I added the link in the description in case you missed it, so make sure to check that one out. So with that lesson and by extending the 2-note per string approach we get some cool creative possibilities for lick writing, but we actually don't change anything concerning the sound of the pentatonic scale. And that is exactly what we will focus on this week and also next week. Here's the scale that I prepared for you this time. So as you can see, we keep the 5-note system of the major pentatonic scale, but we add the characteristic scale degree of the Lydian mode. In the beginning I wanted to record a long lesson featuring all those modal pentatonic shapes, but since the modes are very confusing still for a lot of my students, I wanted to keep it simple. The modes are 7 heptatonic scales, meaning that they include 7 notes, and they are closely related to the natural major and minor scale. In fact, those two scales are modes already. The natural major scale is referred to as Ionian and the natural minor scale is referred to as Aeolian. With all the other modes we actually just have to change one note of the natural minor or natural major scale, with the exception of Locrian, but this one is the least popular mode. So to summarize all that as simple as possible, there's actually just one note that really defines the sound of Lydian, Mixolydian, Dorian and Phrygian. Since we will stick with the major pentatonic scale and the major modes this week, I picked the Lydian mode because I used that one more frequently than Mixolydian. So to get started, here's the basic and most common fingering for the major pentatonic scale. We're starting with the root note C on the 8th fret of the low E string. So we are actually just playing 5 notes over and over again in different octaves. We're playing C, D, E, G, A, C, D, E, G, A, C, D, and so on. So when we analyze that in intervals, we actually don't get very interesting sounds out of that. We get a major second, major third, a perfect fifth, a major sixth, and now we are back at the octave again. The cool thing about the Lydian mode, which actually makes it my favorite major mode, is that the characteristic scale degree is a very dissonant interval. In comparison to the natural major scale in just one octave, that would be C, D, E, F, G, A, B, up to the octave C again. Now to get the Lydian mode, we are actually just changing one note. We are raising the 4th scale degree by a semitone, so we get F sharp instead of F. C, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C. So Ionian, Lydian. So when you learn the C natural major or Ionian scale all across the neck, you actually only have to change F to F sharp in every single position, in every single octave, and then you get the Lydian mode. And this connection between natural major and Lydian is exactly what I want you to learn with this lesson. So now that we established how the Lydian mode is constructed and how it is related to the natural major scale, we can start combining it with the pentatonic approach. So for my example, for a Lydian pentatonic scale, I was playing the root note C on the 8th fret of the low E string, then I was going straight up to the major third, So I'm not playing the major second here. So I'm playing up to E. Then I'm already playing the characteristic Lydian note here, the raised 4th scale degree F sharp. Then I'm going up to the perfect 5th. And then I'm playing the major 7th instead of playing the major 6th interval. So those are actually all the notes in the scale, and then they start over again from the octave C. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 notes. That is the entire scale position. So if I'm really into the sound and the 2 note per string approach of the pentatonic scale, I can easily combine it with the sound of the modes as soon as I know the characteristic scale degrees of each individual mode. I really love this sound and approach, since you can just start out with the major pentatonic scale for your solo over a C power chord, for example. And then you could just switch real quick to add a bit of a Lydian sound to your solo, and then go back to the pentatonic scale and so on. Without really switching between a 2 note per string and 3 note per string approach, you can stay in the same pentatonic mindset and just introduce that little Lydian flavor. Here's a super short and simple practical example lick that demonstrates the sound of the Lydian pentatonic scale quite well. As always, the tabs for everything are available on my Patreon page, patreon.com/Bernd. I really hope that you enjoyed my super short introduction to the modal pentatonic scales in major. We can also check out Mixolydian. Let me know in the comments if that is something you're interested in. Next week we will focus on combining the minor pentatonic scale with the modes, and we will check out the dorian mode in detail. So make sure to tune back in for that one, and also subscribe to get notified as soon as the next lesson is released. Leave a comment in case you have any question I can answer for you, and a like if you enjoyed this video. That always means a lot to me. As always, the PDF tabs and guitar profiles for this lesson are online on my Patreon page, patreon.com/Bernd. Thanks a lot to all my patrons for the support at this point. I will hopefully see you again next week. Have fun practicing until then, and all the best.